So, welcome everybody. I've got the pleasure here to open our seminar we want to have today, which is part of a European project we are conducting here, which is financed by the European Commission. And it is about Don't Gig Up, Never. It's about platform work and business models in Europe. It's a comparative project. We try to compare experiences from several European countries. And this project is coordinated by the Fondazione Brodolini from Rome, Italy. I might introduce myself as a moderator. My name is Thomas Heipeter. I'm working at the University of Duisburg-Essen as a sociologist and take part in this project here as well. Our program is that we've got 4 panelists who will talk about their experiences with platforms and platform work and business models. We've got first Michal Lewandowski from the Confederacja Pracy. I hope I pronounced it well. We've got Luis Perez from the Spanish union UGT. And we've got Sylvain Lebon from the platform Jubel. And we've got Francesca Martinelli from the Italian platform Doc Servizi. And these panelists will give us short presentations of their experiences. And after that, we will open the discussion for the broader audience. And we ask the panelists to talk about 10 minutes or so about their experiences. Then we open for short questions of understanding, what kind ever. And after the 4 panelists finished, we will have a broader discussion with all the people taking part in this seminar. So I would propose to start our contributions by the panelists, and to start with Michal Lewandowski from the Confederacja Pracy, who will talk about the first platform work union in Poland, the initiative and the experiences they made so far. So, Michal, the floor is open for you.
Bardzo dziękuję.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. It is so nice to see all of you. I can see a large group. I am glad to see you. Let me tell you about the first platform work union in Poland. But before I do that, and before I start on this topic, let me tell you a bit more about Konfederacja Pracy, or Labor Confederation, and our efforts that we have done in order to reach platform workers. Konfederacja Pracy is an all-Poland trade union, intersectoral one, which is active in many sectors and in many fields of the economy, and we bring together mostly employees of the financial and banking sector, but also large-scale commerce, but also employees of big companies, significant players for the Polish economy, for international economy. You may have heard about the situation about Solaris and a large strike which was conducted quite recently in Poland. In this particular company, Solaris, it was quite unique in the context of such kinds of protests in private companies. As I've said, we are present in different sectors, but since the very beginning of our existence, and we've been active for more than 20 years, we assumed since the beginning that we are going to reach the places where trade unions were not present so far. And one of such places is definitely platform work. And before we reached this stage where we set up this platform work union, we had other episodes with very special groups of employees, like workers, caring people. It was even before the Uber era or other companies So it was passenger transport or passenger carrying. So it was the group of workers who was not really fitting into the standard of taxi drivers, because we were very much familiar with that. But from their perspective, it was a bit different. These were self-employed people, and Poland is a unique country in this respect, because the diversity of so many different civil law contracts, it is really a large number of various forms of civil law contracts. And basically, I guess there are more of them than in other EU member states. And for a long time, we've been trying to reach the stage, to reach the situation when the work contract will be the basic or perhaps even the only form of contract. But what is typical of Poland, we have many options of entering very loose relations between an employer and workers, so like self-employed, or various forms of what we call junk contracts. So it is not based on the labor law, and basically there are no guarantees for employees resulting from the labor law, for example. So before we reached this stage, that we have the Platform Work Union, we had several organizations which were active in this very special sectors of the economy, because they hadn't had any trade unions there so far. So before the trade union of platform workers was established, and I'm talking here about Pyszne employees. Pyszne is the brand, Pyszne PL, functions like that in Poland, but it belongs to Just Eat. It is from the Just Eat group. So before this organization was set up, we were looking for contacts with employees of other platforms, Uber, Uber Eats, Wolt, Taglovo, Bolt. And from our perspective, I have to say, it was quite rare that employees from the lowest level approached us, like couriers or people like providing this carrying services or passenger transportation services. We were approached by entities employing them. So actually, workers conclude a contract with a certain entity, like smaller entity cooperating directly with the platform. And yes, we have many doubts and concerns around these contracts. They are very weird sometimes. And again, these employees at the lowest level do not have many guarantees, do not have many rights. So on the basis of our experience, well, I can say that then we have not established a trade union. Here, there are plenty of cultural barriers, linguistic barriers, because employees providing services in Uber, for example, have such problems precisely. There is also a legal barrier, because they don't know their rights. They are sometimes not even interested in being part of the trade union or being active in any organization like that. So from the perspective of the trade union, it is a difficult situation. But as for reaching couriers of the Pyszne brand, we ordered meals through the application. A courier delivered meals directly to our building, our headquarters of Konfederacja Pracy. A lot of efforts of the Konfederacja Pracy of the youth, so Labor Confederation of the Youth, with young activists. Sometimes they are still students, university students. Let me mention several names, but maybe that's not the best idea, because I know that we have other plans to explore the sector of platform work. So perhaps I should not be revealing these names for that particular reasons. If I will be able to share my screen with you, I can show you several photos from this particular action. Just give me a second. Can you see that? I'm trying to share my screen.
Yes, that's fine. I can see that.
So it is this action in practice. And as I've said, couriers delivered meals. We were doubtful whether the app will not reject us because perhaps someone realized that these deliveries are going to one place, and maybe the information leaked somewhere and someone realized that we are doing something like that. But no, actually the action was quite efficient. We repeated this delivery and is ordering food several times. And thanks to that, we could reach several dozens couriers, and we found some people with like leadership type of personality. There were different reactions, obviously, to our action, but I would say that it was quite reasonable, quite efficient. And I guess it was useful for couriers because we asked them to help themselves. We made them tea. It wasn't very warm, so they could relax for a moment. Not everyone wanted to take advantage of this opportunity because obviously they need to travel fast through the city from one place to another. So some of them didn't have time for that. But anyway, even if they didn't have time to stay with us for a moment, they received a leaflet like that with like various requirements that we have formulated on the basis of various conversations with people from this professional group. And then, after this action, we had a group of people who were the most interested in our idea. They were willing to change something in their workplace. So anyway, if I can go back to the organization of couriers, we set up a trade union, the first one in Poland, bringing together employees who do platform work. And we had also organized talks with the group Just Eat in Poland, and we had 2 meetings with them, and we had 2 meetings with Pyszne, and the structure of employment of these people in Pyszne is not that complex. In some other cases, it is even more complex. And I'm talking about companies performing or providing services in a similar way, because here Pyszne employs directly employees, civil law contracts, not work contracts, but there is also a large group of temporary, like employed through temporary agencies, temporary work agencies. So, well, here it wasn't that complex. I would say the structure of employment was not that difficult, so it was a bit more easier to do certain things. But Pyszne, from our perspective, or Just Eat Group, is also quite interesting for us for another reason. I'm talking about support for the changes which are being processed at the level of the European Union. I'm talking about the directive, which is to bring more order into work relations for platform workers.
Between the establishment of the organization and the meetings with the employer, there was a certain time in which Dominik Owczarek from IPA helps us a lot, and we try to spread the news about the directive, because there are actually two areas in which the Confederation is right now operating. The first one is the basic one, and it's the work of the riders now and here. the demands were formulated on a leaflet that I showed you, and it was about a higher hourly wage. It was about a more fair distribution of shifts, and I mentioned here the algorithm that allocates work and the time slots to riders, and also observation of the working time was a crucial issue. In addition, when we were looking for the issues relevant for the riders on a daily basis, we also spoke about the higher wages and the higher wages for riders, who are the so-called captains and who train other riders to be able to do the job. So we reformulated some of those petitions, some of those recommendations, because they were not clear and understandable for everyone, and they were not applicable to everyone. So we had to think in a more sectoral way that only applies to some work. And that's why we need to reformulate the recommendations, and we identified what the people demanded, and most of all, it was they needed higher wages per hour. And this was a demand that was made generally. But there is also another area of our operation, and this is the legislative work. So we need to petition so that specific measures and directives are implemented as soon as possible and then transposed to Poland. And this is where we would like to focus our work, and we will definitely advocate for it and lobby in favor of it. And I believe this is the only possibility to normalize the working conditions of platform workers in Poland. I don't think there are other realistic scenarios in which this various and diverse group of workers struggling with a lot of barriers that make it difficult for them to even unionize would be offered any better or more favorable conditions. So if these regulations are implemented in a short period of time, this will mean a lot of change for these platform workers. So this is the story behind the unionization of Pyszne riders. And this is actually what happened within the Takeaway and Just Eat group. Pyszne.pl is just literally translated delicious. It's just a brand name used in Poland. That's all from me. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Mika, thanks a lot for these very interesting insights into the success stories, but also the obstacles you are facing as a platform work union in Poland. So my question is if there are any questions of understanding on what Mika said, and if this is the case, I would like to ask you to raise your digital hands via Zoom so that we can identify you and you can raise your questions. This does not seem to be the case, so we can discuss further issues later after having heard the other panelists. So I now would open the floor for Luis Perez from the UGT. He will talk to us about the Spanish riders law and its consequences on the platform business model. So Luis, you're welcome to talk to us.
It's okay? Perfect. Good evening. Thank you to the Polish colleagues for their hospitality. Thank you, Barbara and Sofia, for the support from Foundation Giacomo Brodolini in every time. Okay, let me show you some last news about a Spanish rider law and its consequences in the strategy of delivery platform companies. We have explained in other meetings the meaning and contents of the Spanish Rider Law. And really, this law was a pioneer in the European law in terms of regulating work in digital platforms because it recognized delivery person as employees. But the Rider Law gave a time period of 3 months from August 2021 to facilitate the adaptation of platform companies to transform their bogus self-employed model to an employment relationship. But which has been the real position, the real strategy of the platform companies after the law in Spain? Well, they have adopted different positions, different point of view, different perspectives about the law. First one, compliance, JASID. JASID left outsourcing and self-employed model, and it started to hire delivery workers directly. Moreover, this company has signed a collective labor agreement with UGT, our trade union, and Comisiones Obreras, with very interesting clauses. Second one, parcel compliance, Uber. After a confusing and very conflictive period that involved collective fires, compensations, Uber has reintroduced a mixed model with self-employed and workers. Moreover, Uber supplies right now are run, from our perspective, collective labor agreement to its workers, the courier agreement. But at least the company applies an agreement, a collective agreement. Third position, leaving the country, Deliveroo. Deliveroo has abandoned Spain, the business, after a collective dismissal, compensating all the delivery drivers they previously worked with, approximately 3,500 people. For position, for perspective, outsourcing, Amazon Flex. After the Rider Law, Amazon has left its false freelance self-employed model, but not voluntarily, because it was sanctioned by a labor inspectorate in Madrid and Barcelona. Amazon has been sanctioned with 3 million euros for its self-employed model and 2 million euros data protection. Now has transformed its model of delivering goods, contracting external companies, outsourcing. Fifth model, non-compliance, Glovo. It's the main company in Spain in figures, in number of workers. But this company has took advantage of the legal period of adaptation to change the design, not the model, the design of its self-employed model, but keeping the essence, the use of self-employed employees, but without a new contract, with clauses trying to avoid the application of the labor relations. The main notes of this model are the follows. First one, daily auction deliveries between workers to obtain the task. Second one, the workers can connect to the application when they wish. That implies less dependence, more flexibility. But if you are not connected, you don't work. What is the result of this model? More fines and more than 200 million euros in unpaid social security contributions. To finish, to conclude, in general terms, the result, the consequences of the Rider Law has been very important. The first one, The rider law has dramatically increased the number of workers from 5,000 to 10,000. Second one, right now, there are more presence of the trade unions in this sector. UGT, our trade union, has 100 more representatives. Third one, we are working in a new collective bargaining agreement in some companies as Amazon Flex, and in others, like Just Eat, we have reached a right agreement, and very interesting. And finally, the director plan for decent work of the inspectorate in Spain has noticed more than 5,000 of false self-employed with equivalent fines. Thank you very much.
Yes, dear Luis, thanks a lot for these insights into the Spanish riders law and the impacts it has for the working conditions of the workers and the activities that are enabled from this for the trade unions. And now my question again is if there are any questions of understanding or other more technical questions which can be posed to Luis right now. If it is the case, please raise your digital hand so that we can identify you and give you the floor. So, as this does not seem to be the case, we would like to, no, he's not here. We would like to continue then with Francesca Martinelli from the Italian platform Doc Servizi, which is a rather extraordinary platform, as I think we will hear from her. And so, please, Francesca, the floor is open for you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to everybody, and I'm very glad that we had the chance to participate in this research, which is very interesting and useful considering the times. I'm going to share my screen because I have a few slides. I suppose you can see. Now I put full view. All right. So, yes, I'm Francesca Martinelli, and I am in charge of international relations, institutional communication, and research in the Italian cooperative Doc Servizi, which is also defined as a platform cooperative. But before talking about Doc Servizi, I would like to introduce you the topic with a bit of context, which is, first of all, today we talk a lot about gig workers and gig economy, but we have to know that the first gig workers have always been artists. In fact, artists plays gig, and the terms gig come exactly from engagement, which is the unique and occasional performance of the artist. They always had multiple clients, discontinuous working condition. They are isolated on the market, on the labor market. And of course, for them, it's also very difficult to perform in the same place. If you work only in a place, you're not that famous usually. And they also face a difficult situation due to undeclared work of the books. And for these reasons, they have usually low incomes, lack of access to social protection schemes, and poor bargaining power. Facing this uncertain and difficult panorama since the 80s in Italy, artists decide to create self-management cooperatives. And self-management cooperatives are usually worker cooperatives, and in worker cooperatives, people have two status. One, the members' status, and the second one is the worker status. As members, artists can organize the cooperative as they prefer. They are entrepreneurs of the cooperative, and they can then achieve goals they could not reach alone. In the cooperative, there is the principle, one member, one vote. And so usually they decide to create the cooperative to mutualize services and resources that alone they won't have access, find collaborative solutions, organize spaces, have better and more sustainable careers, and enter in a community. Another interesting peculiarity of these kind of cooperatives is that they also decide to organize the cooperative with an important level of autonomy. Because of course, artists need to be free in the management of their daily business. And so they created the cooperative to have the chance to manage their activity with autonomy, but not alone. And this autonomy is added to the worker status, which is very important because thanks to this worker status, they can have a more guaranteed within the cooperative. And there are cooperatives that have members that are self-employed, and other cooperatives that offer more secure working conditions to members, hiring them as employees. As employees, artists that were isolated in the market have access to social protection schemes, have minimum salaries, they have social rights, unemployment benefits, all the indemnity, and they also can exercise their union rights. In this context, in 1990, was created Doc Servizi, which is a worker cooperative, self-management cooperative that hire artists. And Doc Servizi was created by a group of musicians that together wanted to obtain a better working condition and be recognized in their work. And so they use the cooperative to have at the same time this autonomy to manage their activity and also have the protection of employees. This model was so effective that today Doc Servizi is part of a network which is called Rete Doc, that just means Doc network, so easy. And you can see all the label at the bottom of the presentation. These are the 8 companies that composed the Rete Doc. And there is Doc Servizi, which is still focused on the entertainment works. But then there are the other cooperatives that are 5 and 3 LTDs. And these cover all the professions of cultural and creative industries. There is also one foundation. And together, this group of realities in 2022 produced around 70 million euros. Today, the network has almost 9,000 members that are spread in 29 offices in in Italy. And there is also one office in Paris. One of the peculiarity of this network and Doc Servizi is the fact that the cooperative decided to invest a lot in the members, in the membership. And the idea was to support members to become more and more professional and have more working opportunities, more sustainable careers. And so the idea of members was to create and develop more and more services to support their activities. And so they shared costs to organize various activities. There are, for example, specific trainings, activity of fundraising, a foreign office, debt collection office, because of course this is very important, a communication office. There is also, of course, all the management of the payrolls that are typical of employees. And one of the services that I like the most is, for example, the travel agency that was created because, artists and technicians and all the people in the entertainment field travel a lot. But usually they have to anticipate the cost of their traveling. In this way, the cost is anticipated by the cooperative, which is big. And so they have the chance to work without thinking and without any problems. There are also community of professionals because there are so many for profession, from technician, journalist, drone pilot, wedding planner, gaming producers, and so on. But as I told you, we are talking about around 9,000 workers and they work in very different ways. There are teachers that work in the morning, musicians that work in the evening. They have different contracts, different schedules, so multiple clients. It's very complicated. So how manage all this without becoming full? Of course, the solution was to introduce in 2012 a platform. This is an ugly technological platform, an in-house technology that was introduced at first to optimize some procedures of working management. And you can see the red part represents the working management tools where all the payrolls are created. Every member has a page where he can follow his own activity. And so also the evolution of the payrolls. But all the other colors that you can see in the slide are other platforms. And these platforms are used to connect members with other members, members with clients. For example, there is a marketplace, and every time that a member sells a product, some products, the money goes directly to the working management tools, so that everything is part of the same payroll. The app Doc Educational, for example, is a tool to manage the lessons of teachers, music teachers, so everything is connected. So this was at first a tool to simplify the life of the cooperative in managing the activities, but then it has become more and more a tool for self-management. And which is interesting is that this tool was created around members' needs. And this is what put Doc Servizi in the larger debate of platform cooperativism and platform cooperative, because there is this idea that you can decide how to organize the algorithm and the digital tools. And that's the reason why all the data are managed in transparent way. There are more or less the principle of blockchain without a blockchain, but you know, this started way before this system was created. And we also follow the cooperative principles, of course, to create the cooperative. So other interesting thing I would like to underline is also the fact that Doc Servizi has also an important relationship with the Italian major unions. Everything has begun in 2011 when there was 2 fatal accidents of stage technicians, and due to these accidents, members of Doc Servizi decided to mobilitate to find solutions for working in better and safer working in safer conditions. And so the result of this mobilization was the first Italian decree dedicated to the safety of entertainment technicians of 2014, the first Italian national collective bargaining agreement for professionals of the arts who work in a cooperative in 2014 too, and then the renewal of these contracts in 2020, like 5 days before the pandemic began. So we did it in a minute. But what is interesting is that in this renewal were included all the professionals of cultural and creative industry. And it was also the first contracts in Italy that included platform work. And it was a regulation for platform work. It was only for cooperatives, but it was a beginning. During the COVID, the activity of the Rete Doc and Doc Servizi was very important. We wrote the first petition to support entertainment workers. In a few weeks, we obtained more than 50,000 signatures. And thanks to this activity, we audited to the Italian government, the parliament, the Minister of Culture, and we obtained 80,000 allowances for 40 million euros in allowances for Italian entertainment workers. We also supported the promotion of a group that elaborated some proposal to reform the entertainment system, and actually these proposals were in part accepted by the government. So to conclude, I just would like to underline a few ideas. We can maybe talk about it later. Platform cooperatives can be interesting because above all, they support workers to obtain more control over their work. The control that often is lost when you are in a classical platform. And this is for 3 main reasons. First of all, because there is more control on jobs dynamics. When you work in a classical platform, sometimes you have no idea about the rules you should follow. The algorithm is not clear, and you are often considered as a self-entrepreneur. In the cooperative, the idea is to offer more sustainable careers and use also mutualization, share of responsibility, share of resources to have more and more opportunities. But you don't have to give up on flexibility. And this is very important because what claims big platform is that normally, if you want flexibility, yes, you should renounce, give up on some rights. That's not true. It's possible to have both. You just have to find a solution. And these cooperatives offer a very interesting solution. Second of all, there is more control over means of production because it's completely different. We have to reverse the perspective. In this case, we have some workers that decide to create a platform to simplify their life. So the platform is tailored around their need. They own the platform. So why do they have to create this platform to exploit themselves? No sense. There is no exploitation, no speculation risk. And also this means the economical system, the business model is very different. It's not extractive business model because, you know, in a classical platform, you have the platform that takes the money from the relation that happen on the platform. In this case, the model is a disintermediation model because we have actually the ownership of the platform. That means that when you optimize, you know, a platform, imagine optimize Uber, all the money goes to the owner of Uber. In this case, the owner are the workers. So if you optimize the platform, the money goes to the workers. And this could change completely the perspective. Last but not least, there is also control and more opportunity in the voice, where voice, of course, means representation, as I showed you before briefly. Workers, above all, if they are hired by the cooperatives and become employees, they are recognized by unions and they can exercise the union rights. They have more opportunity of representation from, for example, undeclared work or freelancing. And so there are more opportunities to have control. And this is completely opposite to the classical management of platforms that used to separate workers, isolate them more and more, and not support the interaction. For cooperatives is a plus value. And that's it. Thank you.
Dear Francesca, thank you very much for showing us how a platform model of how a platform cooperative platform model can work and the advantages that might go along with it. And so we've got another example of these kind of cooperative models now from France, the platform Ubel, which will be presented by Sylvain Lebon. And I'm very happy that he could arrive now, and I would give him the floor to talk with us about the Ubel platform and how it works.
Yeah, thanks. For some reason, I cannot activate my video. Oh, now I can. Cool. There I am. Hi there. Right. So I guess I've been asked to present Hubble today. I guess to make you understand what Hubble is, I should start by why we created it. So the story begins, I guess, in 2015 when we started a network of freelancers that's called HappyDev in France. It's one of the biggest networks of freelancers in France. And it's basically a gathering of freelancers in the digital world, so developers, designers, or communication experts, etc., who get together to build projects. And so you could see it as a consulting company, but without employees and without hierarchies, basically. But that's not a platform. It's really a network of people without digital tools. And then when the network started to grow in 2017, we realized that we needed to equip it with digital tools, and we started to think about platforms and how to best equip this network with digital tools. And what we didn't want to do was to create a Uber and to turn this network, which is very decentralized, into a centralized digital platform. And so we started to work on a subject we had studied a bit before, which was the question of decentralization of digital tools, and the question of interoperability between tools. The idea is that we wanted to equip every single collective in the network with their own tools, so that they can be absolutely autonomous on the tools they use and how they use it, on the algorithm they can use, on the data, what they do with the data, and so on, not being dependent on a central platform that would decide for them the conditions on which they would work, but still be connected with each other, so that we don't have small platforms that, with all the negative effects that people can have if they are very spread out in terms of digital tools. So we started to work on a technology that enables people to build an application, a web application that can connect to the data that's somewhere else in the network. So the idea was to equip every single collective with their own application and let people access each other's data, so that you can have an access to the profiles of the freelancers of the other networks and the job opportunities that you could have in the rest of the network as well. And so since then, there's been this data strategy at the European level from the European Commission that wants to create data spaces, which is basically the same idea in an industry where different parties in an industry can share data without rely on a centralized platform. And that's basically what we were starting to do at the moment, even though we were not conscious at the time that about what the European Commission was doing. And so we started to develop tools for our collectives in France, and we also started a discussion with other collectives of freelancers that we knew in France mostly as well. And the idea that led to Hubble was to equip as many networks, as many collectives as possible, so that we could have access through any of the apps that are available on network to all the freelancers that can be a member of one of the organizations. And so that's how we created Hubble. So Hubble is a digital tool that enables freelancers to share job opportunities between each other, even if they don't belong to the same organization. So the idea is really to go into every single organization, not make them depend on a central organization, really keep this decentralized approach, but interconnect everybody in the network, so that I'm a freelancer, I'm part of Happy Dev in Paris, for example, and I will be able to either find a job opportunity that has been published by someone else in another collective, or find a freelancer that can work with me on my mission, on my job project, whatever, through like inside the list of the whole list of profiles that's provided to me by all the freelancers. And so so that's how we started the thing. We're now getting closer to the Prometheus data space, which is the data space of skills and jobs in Europe. And so, the idea is to keep going into this data space movement, to have this centralized approach. Because we have this strong feeling that depending on a platform is no better than depending on an employer or whatever. So as freelancers, we don't want to be, we want to keep our independence, both from a contractual way in a digital point of view as well. Yeah, maybe if you have questions, I don't want to go too far in the into details, if depending on what you expect from this presentation.
Okay. Yes. Silvan, very interesting. Thanks a lot for these insights. And another example of how a cooperative platform and decentralized platform working in the interests of the participants can work. And yeah, it might be different. It might be interesting to compare this to the experiences from the Italian platform we just heard about. But anyway, first of all, I would like to thanks to the 4 panelists for giving us these insights. And then I would like to open the floor for questions from the audience, whatever these questions might be. And again, please, if you have questions, raise your hands. And the panelists are so kind to wait for your questions and answer them the best way they can. So please raise your questions if you have any. I mean, if there are no questions at the moment, I maybe could start with the first question, if you allow me to do this. That would be a question for Michael and Luis, from the 2 representatives of trade unions we had in our panel, among our panelists. And my question is about the riders. I mean, you talked a lot about in both of your experiences, riders played a crucial role, as I understood this. And I would like to know why this is the case from your point of view. Why are riders so interesting for unions, or on the other, to take it the other way around, why are unions interesting for riders and maybe more interesting for riders than for other groups of platform workers? What do you think? And what are your experiences maybe to try to organize or to get into contact with other platform workers doing more digital work? What might be the difference between the riders on the one hand and other platform workers on the other hand? What do you think about this? This would be my questions. And I don't know, maybe Michael, you could start about this, and then Luis, that would be very interesting for me to get an answer on this.
Dziękuję za to pytanie.
Thank you very much for this question. Of course, we do not remain focused on just riders only. No. Platform work is very interesting and vital for our confederation, because this is the so-called trash employment on the Polish market. The platform workers at the bottom of this hierarchy actually have precarious working conditions. They do not have any paid holiday. They do not have any medical insurance. So for us, it was a very vulnerable group, and that's why we decided that they had the biggest needs, and that's why we focus on them. However, I realize that some people choose to work on platforms, and of course, if they have a totally different situation and they can earn a different kind of money, then perhaps it's the best case scenario for them. But for us, for the Trade Union Confederation, we are present in many different sectors. We are present in many different locations, and we remain open, and we would like to reach out to many different groups. However, the riders that provide very important work, and they delivered food during the pandemic, which was essential. Sometimes they work in very bad conditions. For example, when the weather is bad, their work is definitely underpaid, unappreciated, and so this is the most basic situation of precarious working conditions. However, we are looking also at other civil law contracts in operation in Poland, and some of them have been given nice labels, modern labels, and which means the platforms. But still, these people do not have fair and good working and social conditions.
Yes, thank you very much. So, Luis, if you want to continue.
We are interested in riders because they are workers, okay? And they are in the street, they are visible for all, and these bad conditions are very clear for all people. But the union consider that it's duty to defend the right of these precarious workers. But in the other side, we have the power of a true lobby. All the big companies organized, that is very influenced in not only in the powers, in the government, not, but in other powers, but also in the workers too. It's very difficult to organize this kind of people. Very, very difficult.
Okay, thank you very much for your answers. We've got another question from our round here in the room, and I would like to give the floor to you.
Dzień dobry, witam Państwa.
Hello, Barbara Słodykowska is my name from Trade Union Solidarity. Thank you very much for inviting me to this meeting. I have a comment, not a question, because it seems to me that Michał from the Confederation mentioned a very important thing about the essential workers. And in the present economy and in the present social model, they are not adequately compensated. And these are not only the riders that delivered our food during the pandemic, which was very necessary for many people, but let's also look at the care sector, at the caregivers, for example, working in home for elderly people facilities. Also, people taking care of the disabled or elderly people, they are the essential workers. They are underpaid to a much extent. And right now in Poland, we have a few strikes going on in special care homes. And maybe it marks a shift in the attitudes. So thinking about the essential workers is changing right now, and we need a new social model so their work is appreciated and adequately compensated. So this topic of essential workers is very important for us here too.
Yes, thank you very much. That broadens the perspective a little bit on which groups of workers might be affected mainly by problems and of interest for the trade unions. So, are there other questions from the plenum? Yes, I can see one hand raised there.
Okay, hi.
Please ask your question. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, Karol Muszyński, KU Leuven and University of Warsaw. Should I English or Polish? I don't know, but okay, maybe I'll ask a question in English. So I have a question particularly to platform cooperatives. So the last two speakers, how do you see platform work directive impacting upon your models? Because I understand that it might be challenging because you're currently and particularly Sylvain, I understood that it's very important for you to remain autonomous, to remain freelancers. And yeah, is Platform Work Directive going to impact upon your operations or not? How do you see that? Is it a challenge for you? Is it an opportunity for you? Yeah, that's my question.
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. Sorry for the technical problems. So maybe Francesca, do you want to start and try and answer? Thanks.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, actually, I worked in a working group which is called Non-Standard Workers and Platform Work in CECOP, which is the European Network of Worker Cooperatives. And we did the lobby for the directive and on this topic. And for now, I mean, for the results that are now, we are really happy about the results because we really wanted a very strong directive because it's there is the problem of the level playing field, the dumping of platforms that use, of course, no, I mean, if you don't hire people, they are self-employed, or you say that they are self-employed, you have less expensive, and then they cross the borders, so they pay the taxes maybe here and there, but not here and there. I mean, it's very complicated to manage with these realities, and this means that there is a lot of dumping among platforms, and cooperatives have definitely more difficulties to face economically these realities. So we are very glad that the platform directive support a strong the hiring of employees, and also a transparent algorithm. And we did also an analysis of the effect of the directive on the cooperatives, and actually we won't have problems because we already have transparent algorithm, use of data, we hire employees. So for us, won't be a problem at all, and we strongly support this version. Then we don't know what the Council of Europe is going to do, but for us, our perspective, it's not an issue. Then I don't know what Sylvain is going to say about the freelancers, but I don't think that's a problem either. So I give the ball.
Yeah, absolutely. I am not absolutely aware of the details of this directive, so I cannot give a precise answer on the directive itself. But there's been a lot of debates about making platform workers employees in general, and I think it's a very touchy area because even though some people would like to be employees, some others want to be independent. And as Francesca said, it doesn't have to go. I mean, you can be independent and have some social protection. That's two different subjects. And I think that it might be also a way to avoid the real issue, I think, here, which is that to me, the reason why there is such a bad balance between the power of platforms like Uber, or I mean, it's true of any of those platforms, and the workers, is actually the monopoly that these platforms have taken on the market. And the reason why these platforms have a monopoly is because of the absence of possibility for someone else to exchange or to use the data that's produced by the platform, which means that once you are registered on one platform, only the people on that platform can interact with you. And so that's what creates the monopoly. And I think that focusing on the symptoms, which, for example, is the labor conditions, would be a mistake, because you will not get rid of the excess of power that such a platform has. So I think the first thing is to recreate the conditions of competition on the market. And this is done through, I think, the fair access to data, so that me as a, maybe, I don't know, a small cooperative of freelancers making deliveries of food can join the market and have access to the clients without being dependent on Uber or any platform. So my fear would be that we focus too much on the end of the consequence chain and on the relationship between a monopoly and its workers, instead of thinking on how we can make the possibility for local European organized companies to access the market and exchange with the market, either for a client platform to be able to access the workers of a monopoly platform, or for a workers platform to access the data of the clients. So yeah, so there's probably a lot to do on the status of the workers, but I think the main thing is really on enabling data sharing in a fair way.
Yeah, thank you very much for your answers. I've seen another hand raised by one of our attendants. Maybe we got this hand back. We can get this hand back now.
Yes, is it me?
There it is.
This is Ignacio.
Yeah. Okay. So please, your question, please.
Well, thank you very much, and I apologize that I cannot connect the video. My name is Ignacio Dodeste, and I am an advisor at the European Trade Union Confederation. What I wanted to say that this idea of bringing the anti-monopoly narrative is interesting. By the way, there is indeed a labor case to advocate for antitrust regulation towards digital labor platforms. But I wanted to say a couple of things. Firstly, I would like to invite you to avoid the misunderstanding that a presumption of employment relationship means the mandatory reclassification of all workers as employees. The presumption of employment relationship means that the point of departure of the relationship between a platform and a worker could be that of an employee, but this can be rebutted. And then, I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Okay, sorry. My apologies. So that is one thing that I wanted to say. No, avoiding the misunderstanding between what a presumption is and the final classification of a worker as an employee. Actually, we have a presumption nowadays. There is a presumption of self-employment relationship, and it takes years to the workers to prove the opposite with a lot of money, resources. So only those who have the resources, the time, and dare to challenge their employer are eventually, after 5 years, acknowledged to have been in the past an employee of, let us say, Deliveroo or Amazon Mechanical Turk. The idea is that we reverse the point of departure, but anyway, it will not take years to the platforms to reboot the presumption of employment relationship. If the system is done to work well, this can be done in a very swift manner if there is political willingness. So this is something that I wanted to say, and then we believe, I mean, we at the European Trade Union Confederation, well, many of our members also defend the interest and they organize self-employed workers, and we have allied with organizations of genuine self-employed workers operating through digital labor platforms in our advocacy strategy, and regulation providing for a presumption of employment relationship is also beneficial for genuine self-employed workers, because many digital labor platforms are imposing subordination to workers who in principle should be genuine self-employed workers. I remember we organized an event in Strasbourg in the light of the negotiations of the parliamentary mandate, and there were many genuine self-employed workers saying that the platforms that they operate through were limiting their independence in the market. And this is something which could be avoided with a of employment.
Sorry, but he's having a problem with the internet connection, so please we can continue.
Okay, so yeah, obviously our attendant has a problem with the internet access. So we have the floor again open for further questions. Maybe, there you are again. So if you are connected again, you can finish your comment and your question. That would be, so. It's another one?
Another one. No, it's the same.
It's the same, of course. It's him. It's a different person. Okay, so sorry about this. So we've got another hand raised, and please, the floor is open for your question. Please start with your question or your comment.
So I have a question for Luis regarding this collective agreement between Takeaway and Spanish unions you've mentioned. And you've said that it has some interesting clauses. So if you could maybe please elaborate on that. Thank you.
The agreement that UGT and Comisión Obreras has signed with JASIT establishes labor conditions about salary, better salaries, about hours, overall limit the hours of work. I think it's very interesting, the two main parts, okay? And also more flexibility in order to other sectors, okay, to facilitate the work of this kind of companies. Okay, it's a mixture of interest in the game.
So thank you very much. Yeah, I see the hand of Mika raised.
Bardzo dziękuję.
Thank you for giving me the floor. Yes, this gentleman who just asked the question, he is the leader of the trade union associated with the All Poland's Trade Union Alliance. So he is a trade union member. Also, about the question of presumption of employment and about some uncertainties related to this. Yeah, it's true. Some people present in this sector do not want to have an employment contract. Yeah, in Poland, the situation is different. I mentioned the civil law contracts that we have in Poland, and they establish an employment relationship based on the civil law and not the labor law. And this is notorious in Poland. Until recently, these workers working under civil law contracts did not have a possibility to get unionized. They couldn't be members of a trade union. This possibility was only introduced recently. And there is also certain conditions that must be met. So this person must be employed for at least 6 months at a given employer under a civil law contract to be able to join the union. So the Polish market is very peculiar. It has a very peculiar nature. It sort of is favorable to the practices performed by large companies that abuse their power, and they prefer to enter into civil law contracts rather than employment contracts. Or what they also do is they hire intermediaries, and it's difficult to even identify who your ultimate employer is. And we all right, so there are some people working on platforms that just and we fully realize that. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this clarification. Are there any more questions or comments? Yeah, we've got one here from our room, please.
Może komentarz.
It's just a comment I would like to make. Barbara Słedekowska from Solidarity Trade Union again. So the question of civil law contracts in Poland is all about the cost of labor and all about the contributions to social security and medical insurance. These people are simply cheaper when they are hired under civil law contracts. And I have a feeling this is a crucial issue. So this is not only about subordination, and if subordination persists in Poland, there should be an employment contract. It's true. But as long as the Polish law permits employment under different structures which are cheaper for the employer, then it will be very difficult to make a progress in that area. I would like to share with you my personal reflection. Let's look at the Polish experience from the COVID pandemic. The Polish government introduced special allowances for the people who are self-employed and who are under civil law contracts. And this allowance was intended to compensate them for their lost income due to the COVID pandemic. But what was special about it is that this allowance, this COVID allowance for self-employed and for civil law contract employees was higher than the unemployment benefit in Poland. This means that there is a large group of people in Poland who do not run a true business, who have some savings, who have some capital that would allow them to survive a difficult period, such as the COVID pandemic. And we have a large group of people in Poland who needed immediate aid from the state just to survive. And the trade unions actually protested very much against not raising the unemployment benefit in that period, but creating this special allowance for the self-employed. So this actually showcased the dysfunction of the Polish social system. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for this comment. From my point of view, the experiences you made here or you are making in Poland are very far away from the experiences we heard from the cooperative platforms and their way to organize work on the platform. So the question I have is how to bring these perspectives together, or how to explain the differences. Is it about country differences, that platforms have different opportunities or logics in Western European countries compared to Eastern European countries? Or is it maybe about different segments of workers these platforms organize? So this is a question I have. I mean, maybe could you reflect a little bit about this? What is it from your point of view? Or do we have the same situation in Western European countries and other segments of platform work in which it would be very difficult to organize such a cooperative like Jubel or like Doc Servizi? How to bring these perspectives together? I mean, do you have an idea about that? Yeah, it's Sylvain.
So I raised my hand for another comment. I'm not sure how to answer your question because I don't know very well the eastern part of Europe, so I don't think I would be very relevant on commenting the differences between East and West. So I'm not sure if I should answer. If I keep the
No problem, no problem. If you have got another comment, please.
Yeah, sure. So it was about the matter of turning workers' platforms into employees. I'm very I'm wondering how far you want to go in terms of considering what a platform is. I mean, Amazon has a lot of people who sell things on Amazon. I'm not sure if you want to turn all of them into employees. Same thing for Airbnb. And in France, there's a platform called Doctolib. I'm not sure how well known it is outside France, but basically all the doctors are now members of that platform, and people use it a lot to find a doctor's appointment. And I'm not sure doctors should be turned into employees of this platform. And I fear that if we keep going too far in this thinking of using employment for protection, we just turn everybody into employees of big platforms, because what I see is that the whole economy is actually turning into a platform economy where everybody starts to sell whatever they sell through platforms. So I think there's a strong movement into turning everybody into into platform workers nowadays. I think that's the movement of the economy. And that, yeah, I don't think that turning everybody into employees of American platform companies is the best way to go. So I'm not saying that this question shouldn't be debated. I'm just saying, once again, there's another issue, which is the monopolies on the market, which is a very strong movement, I think. And I think that should be taken into account before we think about the other things. And the other maybe question would be the question of funding of initiatives, because I mean, I would be the first one to criticize platform like, I don't know, Uber or whatever monopoly is there. But then one of the reasons this platform exists is because you need a lot of money to create an alternative, like a digital tool, and put it on the market. Like we know that because that's what we're doing. So we're having funding issues, and yeah, and in the current environment in which the digital environment in which we live, the best way to get funding is to create an Uber-like platform. So I think, yeah, so I think there are two issues that are not about labor employment. One is how to fund digital initiatives, and the other one is how do we make sure that there is interoperability on the data. And then, of course, yeah, I mean, that's a complement to the labor issue, and not I'm not trying to replace the question, obviously.
Anyway, very interesting. The funding question, as we know it from literature, me as a sociologist, there's some literature about cooperatives and the way they work and the problems they possibly might have. And among these problems, usually it's mentioned that it's the problems of finance, of funding, of getting money from banks, and how banks are rating cooperatives, and how they restrict the access to money. And so this seems to be an ongoing problem, which is also relevant for the platform cooperatives. But
yeah,
maybe
not only banks.
I could
Sorry, also,
maybe I could give the floor to the two to our. Do you want maybe before you can add soon? I would like to give the floor to our two unionists or three unionists here in the panel and in the room, maybe to comment on the issue. In which cases platform work should be organized as employmentship, in which cases workers should be employees, and in which cases and activities it might be useful from their point of view that they are or remain self-employed. This is I think, rather relevant questions also for the trade unions, and also regarding the question what the workers themselves want. Do they have the cultural orientations to be entrepreneurs, or do they have the orientation more to the willingness to become workers? It's a complex issue also for the trade unions, I suppose, how to treat workers in this question. So maybe you've got ideas about this. Maybe Michael first and Luis afterwards.
Dziękuję bardzo.
Thank you. It seems to me that we need some flexibility of employment, and this is crucial for the employee. But we can achieve this in a different way rather than by stripping the worker of privileges and rights of a worker, of an employee. So, such as social insurance, paid holiday, medical insurance, and so on. I believe Poland is again different in that respect, and maybe what I'm saying is not true for other countries in Europe. Right now, a worker employed under a civil law contract who, for example, doesn't work because of the weather conditions, they will simply not make any money. They are not an employee, and they will simply not be paid the money that a regular employee would get. So I would not want to... Okay, so flexibility is important for employees, and work-life balance is important for employees. But it's true, people can take up part-time work, but definitely employment is far better, and you should not shift the burden on the workers from large companies that have lots of money. Because there is a lack of balance on the market, and the employers are simply, some of them at least, are unfair. Some of them employ people regularly and they need to pay more for labor. They pay the wages, they pay the social security contributions, they pay also the medical insurance, and they have more cost as a result. So there is also an uneven playing field for employers as well, because other employers simply shift the burden on their workers, and they have savings, they have lower costs. But I don't believe this should be done at the expense of giving workers more flexibility and more freedom. Of course, if you have high-skilled workers who want to work on platforms, who want to work under management contracts, for example, or on B2B contracts, that's fair, and this happens, and this is acceptable. But I still have large misgivings about this, because I know that simply this worker pays lower tax, lower social security contributions, that person's also contribution to our social fiber is also lower. Perhaps they have more money net, but if you look at the broader picture, at the bigger picture, and that everybody should pay a fair amount of taxes, a fair amount of contributions. So what happens if some of us avoid doing that? And this creates further inequalities, and this tilts the balance in an unfavorable way. So for me, of course, flexible working conditions are also available under regular working contracts. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for this position, Michael. And Luis, do you want to add something or yeah, thanks.
We believe that platform companies are like a life organism, evolves, transforms itself. It's necessary to analyze the case to resolve. It's the platform companies really self-employed model, a real self-employed model, or only a fraud that hiding workers. And about cooperatives, outside of the platform, we don't have a very good perspective about it, because in Spain we have a model, we have a kind of society called cooperativas de trabajo asociado, something like that, associated work cooperatives. Okay, that is only effort to darken, to hide the reality of workers with worse conditions. Okay, at least in a part of these kind of societies. Okay, and really we don't have a real perspective about the cooperative in the world of platform companies.
May I?
Okay, thank you for these impressions.
May I give my opinion too, please?
Francesca, please.
Yeah, you know. Thank you. So I honestly, I'd like to try to answer your question. And about cooperatives, we have to consider the fact that we have to distinguish fake cooperatives, first of all, which are criminals that use the cooperative model to do their own business. And this is very important to me because every time there is an LTD that does something very bad, not always people criticize this company. So we have also to distinguish who is managing the cooperative, first of all. Second, concerning the idea, the problem, very interesting that employment is used, for example, in Poland because it's cheaper. Actually, if you do all the calculation right, also in Italy, in some way, the management of employees, it could be cheaper for big platforms, but they don't do it legally. So it's cheaper to have a self-employed. But the point is that if you consider real cooperative principle, the cooperatives have the purpose to offer better conditions to workers than the market. And so, of course, since cooperatives are created by people that usually live in a difficult economic situation, in poor markets, they create the cooperative to live better than the situation. And that's the reason why this model can be very useful if created bottom-up to simply answer the needs of people. You create a cooperative when you have an answer to needs. And that's also the reason why usually I studied many platform co-ops. Platform co-ops that work, they aren't in the same market of the big platforms. It's pointless to try to steal the market from somebody that already has a monopoly. It's very difficult also for the topic of the level playing field that exists among employers. So usually platform co-ops arise where people have needs they need to answer, and they use a technology to do that. Of course, we can't face in an easier way Uber or the others. These are regulations that the state has to do, the European Union. But concerning also the point if it's better to have employees or self-employment, I don't think that the problem is the contract, but the problem, as I said before, is the protection. So to solve this problem at the beginning, we should focus on the universal welfare state, so that everybody has the same rights, not in function of the contract that he has, but in function of the fact that he is a citizen of a country. And then he can choose whether being self-employed or an employee, but it depends, it depends on the work you do, it depends on the situation. Today we are in the crazy situation where people that have less rights are less protected. And this is the point I think we should focus on. And if we find a way to solve this at the beginning, then it will be very difficult also for big platforms to exploit people. But we have to change the system at all, total, let's say.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's the big question of the social security system and the integration of platform work into it. Are there any more questions or comments? There's one from our room. Odile, please.
This is more a reaction. So what for the problem, Francesca, you just raised is sort of fundamental. So how to consider the market segment you can address if you want to compete with platforms, for let's say, for example, in the delivery sector. And I think this leads to the question of the economic model of the platform. So we all know that it's not the Uber delivery, the delivery department of Uber is not does not generate benefits. This is the reason why when you decide to found a cooperative and to deliver parcels or whatsoever, you do not compete on the beneficial segment. You address other segments with a higher value added sector. So, but the question is not to ask ourselves why we can compete on higher value added segments, but why it is possible for big platforms to be able to accumulate losses in some segments where we know that there is no high value added to be created? And the answer is that the economic model of these actors is not related to the delivery or to the transportation of people, but to the valorization of the data they collect with these activities. And this is something we rarely raise in the discussions, but this is also intrinsically related to the point raised by Sylvain about the funding. And as far as the situation is going on, all what is happening is that these platforms, these actors are gaining time. They are gaining time, and in the time they are gaining, operating not always with benefits on low value added sectors, they can get time to address other segments and developing their activities in the data sector. So I think this is a and with the possibility of getting fund with actors really aware about what is the real business model behind platform and regarding the data issue.
Yes, that's true. They get funding by risk capital, for instance, and this might be a strategic advantage compared to cooperatives, which have much more problems to get fundings of this type. So, are there any more questions? If not, maybe I would like to give the four panelists, in the last round the floor to say something we have not talked about yet, we have not asked yet, or that after having the discussion in mind is of importance for you. You would think that it could be a good message for our audience to go home with, so to say. Is there something like that? And who maybe wants to start to give us something at hand to take away? Is there something maybe on the future perspectives of cooperatives from Francesca or Sylvain? You say you might give it
Okay.
Give us at hand what might be of importance.
Well, what I see studying this model of cooperatives that is connected to the freelancing activity. In Europe, we were used in the last century to imagine work as a steady contract, full-time. And so we are used to have a welfare related to this perspective. But we know that it's decades now that working relationships are less stricter and that there is a lot of outsourcing. So what I see is that this model of cooperatives that put together people usually alone is going to have could have a big impact in our societies. I found, because I don't know if I found all these kind of cooperatives, there are now 14 at least in Europe that now involve around 60,000 workers. And the point is to understand the fact that we can't deny individualism. We can't deny the fact that everybody wants to be recognized, but at the same time, people don't want to be alone. So it's important to focus on these needs that people have to be part of a community. And I think that if we focus on this, we could really regenerate not only cooperative movement, but also unions that, for example, in Italy are struggling a lot. But the point is that people want to be protagonists. So this is my perspective. We should focus on the fact that everybody is unique, but anthropos zoon politikon, as Aristotle said, we are political animals, so we need to be with the others.
Thank you very much. So the network effect and the effect of bringing people together as a value of on itself, so to say, produced by cooperative platforms. Yeah. Do you want, maybe Sylvain, want to add something to this perspective?
Yeah, sure.
I mean, this was a point mentioned by you as well, as far as I remember.
Yeah. I'm going to be very in line with Francesca, I guess. Yeah, I also have the feeling, well, I think that some actors have come and changed the market without respecting the rules. And of course, the first reaction is to say, okay, that we have to make them respect the rules. But then I guess, yeah, we shouldn't be missing the fact that the whole game is changing, actually. So we have to take a step back and understand what's going on and what we want to achieve, and then rethink the whole rules. And that's why I'm pointing the digital regulation very much. And because I don't want to live in a world where everybody is an employee from an American platform. That's definitely not my perfect European society. And yeah, so that, I guess my takeaway will be this. That's not the world I want, basically.
So cooperative platform also is an answer to the American form of platform capitalism, so to say. So then maybe the floor for two last messages, one from Michael, one from Luis from the trade union point of view.
Podkreśliłbym na koniec, o czym mówiłem.
Let me stress at the end that we very much would like the European Union to regulate a lot of issues. And this will help us also in Poland. This will help us eliminate the precarious working conditions. And as you can see, countries in Europe differ from each other in that respect. In Poland, it's very much about the civil law contracts, and this is the culprit. So we would like the regulations to be enacted as soon as possible. We will campaign for that, and we will advocate for that. And we would like these regulations to go in the direction that was indicated already in that directive. And also, we are very much supporting the European Trade Union Confederation and other unions operating in Europe. And we would like all the workers that are now stripped of their rights and privileges, we would like them to enjoy full rights and privileges. We would like them to work under the employment contracts model according to the Polish regulations. Thank you very much for inviting me to speak at today's workshop, and I hope that meetings like this one will lead to very fruitful conclusions and recommendations. And I also agree with what Barbara said about the essential workers and them being underpaid and unappreciated. So they're very important for us, yet their wages are very low and unsatisfactory. The same holds for riders, the same holds for caregivers at social homes and taking care of elderly people and disabled people. And there are many sectors like this, essential for the community, yet underpaid. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this statement. And the last very short message from Luis. Very short. From the state, very short.
If you want. We want the application of the labor law because we consider that it's the better form to protect and improve the welfare state. Okay, nothing more. Thank you very much.
So thank you. This was rather short indeed. Thanks especially to the panelists for joining us. And yes, we share the hope that we might have some impacts with these kinds of meetings. Hopefully we have. And thanks a lot for all the attendants, for asking questions and for giving us a floor. So I hope you all have a good time, and maybe we see us again in other circumstances or occasions. Thanks a lot and have a nice time and have a good day. And thanks again. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.